Feeling jealous from time to time is totally healthy. It's completely normal. It's okay to feel that little tinge of jealousy, but it becomes toxic when that jealousy is really guiding your life and making you and or your partner change their behaviors, change the things that they're doing. So in my case with my husband, when my jealousy was really at its worst, we weren't able to go to dinners and to movies and to events because my jealousy would show up and we would get into arguments. And it just made it where it wasn't fun for either one of us. And then at a certain point, it became so bad that he was changing, and felt like I feel like I can't even look around the room without being accused of something. And so that's when you know that it's toxic and it's hurting your relationship and it's hurting you. And we need to take a look at it and see what's going on.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about overcoming insecurity, jealousy, and a lack of confidence. I'm delighted to welcome Shanenn Bryant. Shanenn is a relationship confidence expert, podcast host, coach, and the founder and CEO of Top Self. You can reach Shanenn at her website, topself.com, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Shanenn. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to have this conversation because it's important.
Yeah.
This is an aspect of our well-being that we don't talk about a lot, and that is feeling jealous. And I think everybody feels jealous from time to time. I think if there's any person in this planet who has never had that feeling, they're a little weird. But at what point is it beyond normal? And this is a problem. What kinds of
Yeah.
things am I going to see?
Yeah. Really good question because I think people do go, well, I felt jealous before. Feeling jealous from time to time is totally healthy. It's completely normal. It's okay to feel that little tinge of jealousy. And sometimes we might need that in our relationship from time to time. But it becomes toxic when that jealousy is really guiding your life and making you and or your partner change their behaviors, change the things that they're doing. So in my case with my husband, when my jealousy was really at its worst, I mean, we weren't able to go to dinners and to movies and to events because my jealousy would show up and we would get into arguments. And it just made it where it wasn't fun for either one of us. And then at a certain point, it became so bad that he was changing, and felt like I feel like I can't even look around the room without being accused of something. And so that's when you know that it's toxic and it's hurting your relationship and it's hurting you. And we need to take a look at it and see what's going on.
Wow. Okay. So I would love to get into this deeper. I have kind of an experience secondhand, but my daughter is a nurse and she works in the trauma unit. And so she works with people who've come in, they've had accidents, they've had problems, they have things. And recently she had a man come in who had broken up. He'd been in an accident and she was working the night shift. And the girlfriend was there and she was panicking that there was a nurse coming in who was talking to her boyfriend and he was
Mm,
nice to her. And so she started accusing her. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to take him from me? You can't talk to him. You can't look at him. She says, I am a nurse. I have to talk to him. I have to
right.
look at him. And then she said, my daughter said, as soon as she'd walk out the door, she could hear just arguing and yelling. And you can't look
Mm,
at her. You can't talk to her. And so when she'd come back in to check and give meds, the patient had to look at the ground or the corner of the room. He was not allowed to look in her direction while she cared for him. And it made the whole night, that whole shift, so uncomfortable and so
mm,
painful for this man who's trying to recover. But the biggest problem was not his injuries, it was the jealousy of his girlfriend. And so when
yeah.
you're talking about what kinds of things this can come up, would you mind sharing some more examples? Because when I heard this story, I thought of you. I thought, oh, Shanenn's going to talk about that, that this is something that is beyond normal. This is
Yeah.
something where You can't look at this person. You can't smile at this person. You can't be kind because if you are, that means, you're trying to take my man from me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I'm sure it was uncomfortable for your daughter to some
Oh, yeah.
degree as well, being the nurse, like, oh, I don't want to go back in that room, and how uncomfortable anytime you're around people who are arguing, but especially if you're the center of that argument. So, yeah, I'm sure it was uncomfortable for all of them, all three of them. And, that is that's an extreme case, but it happens and it happens a lot. And that is a very good example of this, um, morbid jealousy or really extreme jealousy that I work with a lot of clients on to try to tone that and tame that down. It really comes from this, lack of self-worth, feelings of self-worth, this lack of you have insecurities in yourself. And then it translates over into your relationship. So for me, I grew up in a very dysfunctional, chaotic, violent environment. My father was an alcoholic, and my parents divorced when I was 12. And my dad would say, I'm in AA and I haven't drank for this long, and I'm going to come and get you and pick you up, for the weekends, me and my little brother. And then, of course, he wouldn't show up. And we just knew that he was still drinking. And then when he did show up, he had a beer in his lap, to pick us up. And I said, no, I don't want anything to do with you as long as you're drinking. And he took that to heart. I didn't talk to him again until I was 25, and that was briefly. And then I didn't talk to him again until the last 3 years of this past 3 years, which was the last 3 years of his life. And through that, the reason I tell that story is because most people with this type of jealousy have come from some type of dysfunctional background. They have, maybe a story like mine where they've been telling themselves, well, gosh, if my own father doesn't love me, then why would anybody else? If my own father doesn't love me, I must not be worthy of love. And so then we get into that scarcity with our relationships. We're either, we're constantly anxious. We're waiting for the other shoe to fall. We're waiting for our partner to cheat or to leave us or something really bad to happen. And so even though it is not rational to say this nurse can't work on you or you can't look at this nurse, it really comes from fear and a fear of loss. And so that's where jealousy is different than envy. Envy is I want what someone else has, and jealousy is I'm fearful someone will take what I have. And so then those actions come out of that extreme fear that they've had probably since they were a child, in most cases. Some may happen, they've been in a relationship with some infidelity or a series of relationships with infidelity. And so then they're like, I'm going into protection mode and I'm going to do anything I can do to make this not happen to me again. I don't want to feel that pain again. So, as irrational as that person was, as the girlfriend was, it really comes from, as strange to say, this love of that person or this fear that they don't want that person to leave them or to be taken from them.
That was beautifully explained. And it's so
Mhm.
interesting that the real fear is not, or the deeper fear is not that my boyfriend or my husband or my significant other is going to look elsewhere. The real fear is their right to be looking for someone better because I am not worth loving.
Yeah.
I am not worth keeping. Like if I were in a relationship with me, I'd be looking elsewhere too. And that's a
Right.
really sad feeling and a sad place to be. And I'm so grateful that you're bringing this up so that we can talk about it. And I would love to talk about some of the steps that you used to help you feel like I am worthy of love.
Yeah.
Okay. And if my father had an issue and he could not show me his love, it's not my fault. His issues were his. I
Hmm.
was worthy of love the whole time.
Yeah. And really that's the big turning point. And it's where I start working with people too, is to go, let's get really self-aware. One, what is this? What are those stories, right? That we've been keeping, that I've been telling myself since I was a little kid. When my dad wouldn't, even before my parents were separated, when he didn't come home, that was a sign of like, well, he's abandoned us. He's left us. He's not here for us. He's not supporting me. He's not here to lean on. And so it starts even before that relationship was over. And, that continuous story that I told myself of, well, I must not be worthy of being loved. If my dad doesn't love me, girls are supposed to be daddy's girls. And if I'm not that to my own dad, then I must not be anything for other people. And so I had to go back and go, wait a second, is that story, is that belief that I really didn't even know for the longest time that I was saying to myself that was there until I started really looking at, why am I jealous? What is behind this? What's the root of it? Then I came to, oh, these are the things that I'm saying to myself. And I've been saying that for a really long time. So of course I believe it. And I've been shown now too, because I'm looking for evidence in different relationships that make it seem, oh, well, this person actually did cheat on me. So there you go. That's my proof. I knew I wasn't worthy of their love. So I had to go back and say, is that true? No, it's not. My dad had a disease. My dad had a problem with alcohol. That has nothing to do with my worthiness as a person, has nothing to do with whether I'm worthy to be loved or not. And so I had to realize that, along with some other steps of like, now this has really become a habit of mine for a very long time. So now I also have to change those habits with some techniques and tips, but that's where it starts.
Excellent. And I'm so glad you brought up those pieces parts. And as we talk about self-love again, I just love that this is the central message, that I am lovable. I love cognitive behavioral therapists. They talk about whatever problem we have, and it really even doesn't matter what it is. If you keep asking the questions of why, and get to the base of it, almost always question is, am I lovable? And then with Brene Brown and her research of, what causes shame and what makes some people happy and what makes some people have connection, what makes some people not, it comes to one variable, and that is whether or not we believe that we're worthy of love and belonging. So, am I lovable? Am I worthy of love and belonging? Those basic questions, with whatever situation we're dealing with, usually it comes back to those questions. And I loved how you kind of unraveled. How do we do it? First, we become aware. And now that you're an adult, as a child, we often blame ourselves for whatever situation took place, whether it's abuse, whether it's abandonment, whether it's a divorce. It's normal and natural for children to blame themselves. And Dr. Gabor Mate talks about that in his uh, trauma series. But we, as adults, can go back and look at it from a different angle and say, oh, wait a minute. That wasn't my fault. That had nothing to do with me. And so the
Yeah.
awareness, and I love that you mentioned just being aware, not quite enough. We got to work on those habits, because I've spent maybe years, maybe decades building up evidence that what I believe is true.
Yes. Yeah, what I believe is true. And I mean, it's just like anything else, too. We get in these habit loops, these insecure habit loops that are just like any other habit that we have. So, like, how do we break that? Because that's the way I operate. That's what I'm used to in life. And as a matter of fact, when my husband and I first got together, I think what really my jealousy was the worst at its absolute worst with him. And I joke, should he have stayed? I don't know. Like, maybe not. I'm glad that he did, but it was my worst with him. And I think it's, because I felt, okay, this is somebody who's really worth it, right? And so now I'm really scared. But it's kind of working up to, well, then I've also gotten into these habits of mine that that's just how I've been doing things for so long. I don't even realize that I'm doing some of the things that I'm doing. Um, and I relate it a lot to this kind of insecure reassurance loop and relating that to, quite frankly, drug addiction, because it's that same, like I have this insecurity. I want to go, I need to fix it somehow, which is I need to go get this reassurance from my partner, either by looking at their phone and, okay, I don't see anything that makes me feel better for a minute, or maybe asking them questions, oh, do you think she's attractive? Or what did you do today? And who were you with? And whatever gives me some type of reassurance and makes me feel better for the moment. But then that only lasts for so long. And then I need it again. Now I'm like, okay, well, I'm starting to feel anxious again. I need to look at the phone again. And the wild thing is, if you have what you really are wanting, which is somebody who is faithful to you, somebody who is upstanding and what you want, you're never going to find it because you can't prove fidelity. I'm not going to look at his phone and see something that says, I am not cheating on you. So then when do you stop? You never stop unless you get out of that habit loop, because I would look at this phone and maybe I'd feel better for a minute, but then my next thought was, oh, he must be really good at hiding it. Or I'm not looking in the right place, or I'm not looking at the right time, or he's got another phone, or he has other ways, or this person's covering for, I mean, you will create, right? Because my brain is set on the fact that this is going to happen to me. And so I'm going to do everything I can to try to prove that right. And I'm going to keep searching, searching, searching. And so that is where it gets so hard and bad for people, because they're constantly looking, but then they need it again right after. Because, okay, well, that didn't really satisfy that, because I can't prove that. I can't prove that fidelity, because if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing, there's never going to be anything there. So I'm going to constantly think, oh, I need to look here. I'm not looking at the right place. So it's that vicious cycle, and getting out of that cycle is a really important piece of it.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that so well. And that's searching for evidence, and yet finding the lack of evidence is not sufficient to
Mhm.
calm that anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that was very helpful. So I'm just thinking now back to the story with my daughter. So
Yeah.
each time this girlfriend was saying all of these things, maybe what she was looking for was validation to her boyfriend. Do you still love me? Do you still love
Yeah.
me? Do you
Yes.
are you being faithful to me? And it was a constant battle, whether it was
Hmm.
internal or external. It became both. But that's okay. So that's what she was
Yeah.
looking for, but never
That's what
satisfied.
she's looking for. And also, what I know to be true is, after that incident, most likely she was very embarrassed of her actions, felt very ashamed, felt very alone, because even though we're the ones that do it, and this happens all the time, where, and it happened with me as well. We'd be in a restaurant, I would have a meltdown. Sometimes we'd have to leave. Sometimes it was just a very awkward, uncomfortable, not speaking to each other, rest of the dinner. And then, having an argument on the way home. And then once everything was calmed down and I had settled down and my nervous system had settled down, I immediately felt ashamed of the way that I spoke to him or treated him or what I did in that instance, but not enough to change it the next time. It's just part of, again, that cycle of, I'm so ashamed. And that's why not a lot of people will talk about jealousy. I mean, no one's putting it on their dating profile like, hey, I will look through your things and I will be, really anxious in this relationship and I'll question you all the time. No one's doing that because it's very shameful. And so people also don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it. even to their friends, even to their family, because most don't understand what it's like. Like, he hasn't done anything, so what are you worried about? They don't understand that constant anxiety and that worry and the loop that they're in.
Wow. That's why I'm so grateful for you and for talking about this because it hasn't been brought up. I mean, this is not something that I've ever had this particular
Yeah.
topic to be able to talk with someone who is an expert, someone who is an overcomer, someone who has experienced this and is willing to talk about it and willing to share and help others. So thank you for what you're doing and becoming aware. And that cycle of anxiety and shame,
Yeah.
anxiety and shame, that is a painful spiral that doesn't lead to any place good. So
No.
how can someone who is feeling that start to turn it around? We've talked about let's work on our self-love. Okay,
Yeah.
I need to learn how to love myself. I need to admit, sometimes that's hard, that the problem really isn't him,
Hmm.
it's
Yes.
me. And no one likes to admit that they're not perfect because that's painful. But let's say I'm admitting, even if I don't admit it out loud, think I'm a little beyond normal. There's
Mhm.
something that I'm doing that's messing with my relationship. I'm working on my self-love, but my habits stink. Can you help
Mhm.
me? What do you do now to start changing those habits?
Yeah, well, you nailed it for sure. Well, first we have to admit that it's you. Set aside the partner. Some people can have a partner that maybe they are doing things, and some maybe they're not. We don't know. We can't tell the future. We don't know what your partner's going to do or not do, or if you all are going to last or not last. What we really want to look at is this is a you problem, or as we say, a me problem, because the real question is why are you so focused on it? Like, why is this such a big thing for you? Where you're putting so much currency into what your partner may or may not do. What is that? And so when I say, you know, jealousy is not the problem. Jealousy is a solution. Jealousy is there to say, you've got something you need to look at. So jealousy is a symptom of whatever that underlying problem is that we talked about, like going back and going, okay, why am I jealous? And I love you said, ask why, ask why, ask why, ask why. And that is truly something we have to do and just go, why am I so jealous? Well, I'm jealous because I'm worried that they're going to leave me for somebody else. Why are you worried that they're going to leave you for someone else? Well, because, and you just keep going with that. So understanding that the jealousy is there, it's not the problem. It's a solution. And so we just have to figure out what it's trying to solve for you. Um, so that's why going into, another really strong place to start is to say, okay, what are the things that I think, do, and say? Because in this, so I may question my partner about his day not because I'm really interested, not 100% because I'm interested in his day. I'm trying to connect the dots of what he said or where he was supposed to be or that type of thing, right?
Him in his
So
life.
yeah. So that is something that I am doing or something that, I may say to him, and this was a prime one that I used a lot and didn't realize I was saying it a lot, but maybe he's telling me, reminding me of something that happened, oh, remember last year when we did this, this, or this. If I didn't remember immediately, I go, no, that must have been your other girlfriend, or that must have been your girlfriend.
Oh,
But I would say it without really thinking, one, how often I was saying that, but two, how damaging that was to the relationship. Like it was just an off the cuff kind of like, just in case thing that I would say, right? And so that's where we have to nail down what are the things you think, do, and say. So that's a say one. And then, of course, the think one, going back to like, well, what are those beliefs that got me through that trauma as a child? Or what are the beliefs that I've had that worked for me in the past that might not be serving me anymore? Like my statement to myself that I'm not worthy of love. So the think, do, say are really big ones. And then what I've typically done with patients in the past is like, we're going to pick one to start with that we're no longer doing. So for me, when I started this on my own, I did my own think, do, say journal of like, I just have to get really aware of everything that is this jealousy. Like, what am I doing on a daily basis that's contributing to this, that's contributing to my own anxiety about it, and that's contributing to my own anxiety about it. And when I went through that list, it was like, oh gosh, I didn't know that I said it that often. I didn't know that I've been telling myself that for this whole time. I didn't know that that was hurting them in that way or what that must sound like. So think do say is a really great place to start.
Excellent. So it's really becoming aware. And I love how you talked about I said it and I wasn't even aware I was saying it. We can
Mhm.
just reflexively come up with some kind of a response that isn't, we're not consciously coming up with a thing. It just kind of bubbles up. It comes from our subconscious. It just reflexively comes out. And I thought it was interesting. You talked about jealousy not as a symptom, but as a solution. And I would love to talk about that just a little bit more, how it is used as here's what I think the problem is. And I think that my searching it, my validating myself, is that what we're looking for? Is I'm seeking that validation? That's why it's the solution, because I'm looking for my evidence to either prove me right or prove me wrong. Is that how it's a solution?
Well, I think it's a solution in a sense of jealousy is it's there to solve something for you. And the solve something for you is, hey, you need to go look at these behaviors that you're doing. You need to go look at this thing this belief that you've been holding on to for so long that you need to solve for. Like you need to go back and look at that because it's damaging these other areas of your life. Jealousy doesn't show up just in the relationship. It also, when people are in this extreme jealousy, they are focused 90% of their energy, their thoughts are going to their partner and what their partner might be doing and being upset and feeling anxious. They don't feel present with their children. They can't concentrate at work because they've got this thing going on with them in their relationship. So, what is that jealousy trying to solve? Jealousy itself is not a problem. When it's like this and it's overtaking, then it's saying, "Hey, you need to find a solution for this." What this jealousy is showing up as a, "Hey, we're going to keep poking until you go look at this. It's not going to go
Okay.
away, right? Until you
So
go look at this."
let me see if I can understand that. So jealousy is the solution, doesn't mean the jealousy itself is solving my problem. What you're saying
Right.
is this jealousy is my big red button that says there's something you need to look at. Is that
Yes.
kind of closer? Okay.
Yes.
And then by bringing it to my, well, maybe not to my awareness, but bringing it to everybody else's awareness, might be just what I need so that I can search and find an actual solution so I don't feel that way anymore. Am I close?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
All
You
right.
got it. Exactly. Exactly. And I wanted to go back. I was talking about, when we do the think, do, say exercise, the big part of that and trying to get out of that habit loop was in my own journey when I was doing the think, do, say, I would, I started with just one small thing and I picked the one thing that I thought, okay, maybe I can get through the day without doing this one thing. Everything else I'm allowed to do, but this one thing. And so for me, it was looking him up on location. I would do it constantly. I used to joke like, man, if I was getting paid for how often, how much time I was spending looking at his phone or looking him up on location, I would have made some decent money at the time. But that was my one thing. Like, okay, no matter what, if you want to go look at his text message tonight, I guess go ahead. Or if you want to go snooping through his email, I guess go ahead. You want to ask him 50 questions? I guess, sure, go ahead. But you cannot look him up on location. And that's what started. And then it was like, oh, wow, I made it. And this is the truth. I made it a few hours without looking up where he was. Okay, now I made it a whole day. Now I've made it 3 days. And you start to feel kind of how you actually have more control back, more time, more like, oh, that thought is not there because you get anxious every time I pick up the phone to go look him up. I would get anxious. It would make my stomach hurt. You knew that this isn't something that's positive that you're doing, and you feel bad about it. Um, so once that was gone, even with just the one thing, that felt like an accomplishment. That got me out of that habit cycle for that one thing. And then we can move on to, okay, now what's next?
I love that. Let's start with one step
Yeah.
rather than trying to swallow the whole elephant, so to speak, where it's just
Yeah.
like, don't expect me to do a 180 overnight. I've had years, maybe even decades of these habits. So let's be compassionate with ourselves and say, okay, let me do one thing and
Mhm.
practice that and get stronger. And then I can
Yep.
do one more thing and practice and get stronger. Oh,
Yeah.
excellent advice. Shannon, this
Yep.
has been fantastic. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
No, I just want people to know that if you are experiencing this extreme jealousy, to just understand that you are not alone. You're not the only person that is thinking that way or feeling that way or saying those things. But if it does feel like something that is really taken over and is guiding your life and your relationship, then that is time to like, let's let's dig in and get some support and figure out how to turn the volume down on that jealousy so you can get back to enjoying things that you love to do because that was the biggest piece. Of course, now we're able to go to dinners and, do whatever we want to do. And that rarely pops up. But, so life is completely different. And it's good to get back to the things I hated missing out on things that I otherwise would have enjoyed doing. And so if that's you, I strongly encourage you to seek help because there are solutions.
I love that. This shows this is a benefit not only for my relationship, not only for my partner, this is a benefit for me, a
Yeah.
benefit for my happiness, a benefit for my peace, a benefit for my well being, and that there is a way to get there. So I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Pages of Positivity. To conquer jealousy, start by confronting your own insecurities. Today, I invite our listeners to confront and overcome our own insecurities. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.